On this week's Gridiron Report, we have the Lions filling their open offensive coordinator position and Cade Cunningham being named to his second All-Star game this year as a starter. And it's all brought to you by Pins and Aces, our favorite spot for all golf apparel needs. Use promo code GRIT, G-R-I-T, for 21% off any product at pinsandaces.com. Let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim. From the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the grit iron report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire. Grit iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The grit iron report where the stories are proud.
Welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First All Detroit Sports podcast, presented by Mic Drop Studios. Today is Wednesday, January 21st, and I'll tell you what, Brad Holmes really sometimes makes it hard to root for this Lions team. I say that on the heels of them finally hiring and filling the open position of offensive coordinator, that being Drew Petzing. A lot of differing opinions out there on that. We'll talk about the breakdown of who Drew is exactly, maybe why they decided to go with him, our thoughts on the matter, what the Lions are really going to need to do this upcoming year, and then we're going to go to a break and get to some Pistons news. But I'll tell you what, man, this came out of left field. Like nobody knew this was happening, right?
Dude, yeah, like I saw the hire, and my first reaction was, who? Like, wait, who the hell is this guy? Like, he, like, hand up, he just was not even on my radar of like a possibility. And I know there's a ton of names that were thrown out there, the likes of Mike McDaniel, like, there were some pretty juicy names. And so when the Lions made their decision and are going with Drew Petzing, I'm like, I just don't really know who this guy is. And so my immediate knee jerk reaction was, this is awful. This is our fifth option, whatever it was. It wasn't even an option for me. Like, not that I'm calling the shots or anything like that. But and then I looked into him a little bit more, and I see where Brad Holmes is going, and I see where Dan Campbell is going with this. Like, for one, they want something stable. They want to stabilize the ship. This has been, I mean, the Johnny Morton experiment, just a colossal fail. He lost his play calling ability in like week 7. So they knew they wanted someone who, can get back to our roots, can run the ball, can throw to our tight ends. I think that from that standpoint, Petzing, he does a great job with that. I mean, look at Trey McBride. He's incredible, one of the best tight ends in the league. So that's I'm not saying it's all because of Petzing, but certainly some of it. So I see where they're going with it, but it seems like such a vanilla hire. Seems like they probably swung and missed on their top at least couple options, and we're like, well, shit, we got to get someone, and they go with this guy. So overall, I'm just still pretty underwhelmed.
I think if it wasn't coming off the heels of literally, we might have said the exact same thing. Granted, it wasn't the very beginning of the offseason, it was towards the end, but we probably said very similar things about Johnny Morton in that, like, immediately we were frustrated because we said the same thing. Who do we hire as this? And then you kind of just naturally talk yourself into it just because we're stupid fans. Like, we were passionate about it. We're going to talk ourselves into it. I remember sitting on this podcast talking with you saying like, okay, well, yeah, Johnny Morton was with the Jets. It didn't end well. He supposedly was pretty hard-headed, really didn't mesh with players. But, the yada, 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 yada. I'm afraid that we're having to do this again. And like you said, it's definitely different. And we'll get into like Petzing and who he is and what he specialized. You kind of just did there a little bit, but it is a little bit different. But at the same time, it's also very much the same. And we'll never know the ins and outs of how the other conversations went with the other candidates. Of the names, obviously Mike McDaniel was the one that everyone were keeping an eye on. Everyone wanted Mike McDaniels. It got released after we already hired Petzing that the Lions met with Mike McDaniel and didn't feel that he was a quote-unquote good fit with Dan Campbell and the team, which maybe is true. Like, I would be lying if I didn't think that as well, just because McDaniels is a very unique guy. He's obviously super laid back. He runs it, he runs to the beat of his own drum. And I would be lying if I said like that I didn't think that wouldn't match with Dan Campbell. Like, that didn't make sense. But then at the same time, play calling wise, it did seem to match up with what the Lions were trying to do. And so like that all made sense, but it obviously came out after I'm sure they actually released it on purpose that they quote unquote just didn't feel like McDaniels was a great fit here in Detroit. Now again, who knows if it was McDaniels that I kind of just let him know like, hey, thank you for the interview. I'm really not that interested. Who knows if this was our only option, but it definitely came out of left field. They kept the interview somewhat of a secret. I'm not really sure why. I know it was released that he did come in for an interview yesterday or the day before, and it was kind of kept a secret. But I will say this before we actually get into who Petzing is and what he brings with him and stuff like that. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, like their careers here in Detroit are 100% handcuffed to Drew Petzing, excuse me.
Drew Pretzel. This is on you, Drew Pretzel.
Dude, if Drew Pretzel can't pull it, no, but if they fail again in hiring an offensive coordinator, I think very much so everyone will be, calling for the job in some way or another. Like if he doesn't succeed with the offense and the talent we have, and now that would be back-to-back guys, that didn't work out. 100%, I feel that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, their careers here in Detroit are handcuffed and tied to Drew Pretzel. Now, for better or for worse.
I can't tell if you're doing it on purpose or not now, but
that one was on purpose.
That was on purpose. Okay. As much as I want to like disagree with you, I can't. I have to agree. Like this is, and especially if they not only do they swing and a miss on Drew Petzing. Now I want to say Pretzel, goddammit. But if they also don't make the playoffs again next year, God forbid, like those guys are firmly on the hot seat, and changes are probably being made. But with that being said, this is such a good offense with so many weapons, and as long as injuries aren't a factor, that's a big if. It's been a factor for 2 straight years, but it's almost like you're going to have a top 10 offense. It's impossible not to. So if they don't, then yeah, it's firmly on the likes of Brad Holmes, on Dane Campbell for once again taking a stab on a guy and completely swinging and missing. So I guess I want to break down Petzing's track record a little bit. Arizona, so offensive coordinator, 2003, 2004, and 2005. So there were some highs. There were some highs for sure. He's known for establishing the run game. I think that obviously lends itself to being a pretty perfect fit for the Lions. We love to run the ball as well. We love establishing the run. If we can't run the ball, we basically can't play football. So they definitely had he had success, and the Cardinals had success. I think in 2023 they were ranked about a top 5 offensive attack. 2024 they were damn near the same. I think definitely top 10. It hasn't all been good. There's been some passing woes. He's dealt with a ton of injuries too. So I guess you can say from like an adaptability standpoint, like if you can deal with injuries and still have a decent offense in Arizona, you can probably adapt pretty well to Detroit's injuries. That will, ultimately happen because it seems like we're the most unlucky franchise in the world. But so there is that. In 2024, he led a top 8 offense in EPA per play when the team was healthy. Obviously, there was a ton of lows in 2025. Kyler Murray was hurt, benched, whatever. They moved on from him. Jacoby Brissett actually looked decent. I mentioned Trey McBride. He's been incredible under Drew Petzing. I mean, I'm trying to spin it as good as I can, but it just seems like such a vanilla hire. And I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see, but I'm not at all excited about this.
100%. I think that's the most level-headed way to go about this. It's just being, understanding that it's a vanilla hire. Obviously, there's a huge stain on anyone coming from the Arizona Cardinals because they're such a poverty franchise. They've been so bad for so long, and it's not looked pretty whatsoever. So, like, as a fan, it's stained. It's a stained hire. So, like, that's so vanilla. But you in the nail on the head right there with the fact of the matter is, like, Johnny Morton, the only reason I think he really was brought here was because he was technically here in Detroit when that offense with Ben Johnson and Jared Goff, first guy here, was installed. So he had some familiarity. There really wasn't much cohesiveness and understanding between what Johnny Morton likes to do and what this offense, what Jared Goff works best as. You hit the nail on the head with that's exactly what Drew Petzing does. He prefers to run his offense in almost exactly the same way that Jared Goff runs, it succeeds in the most. So he loves to, like you said, establishing the run, play action. He runs play action more than almost any other offensive coordinator. And that's exactly how many times have we come on this airway and say, Gotta run, gotta establish a run, gotta get the play action going, and we'll be okay. Now, Petzing did run a little bit more out of shotgun. That was more so just based on what Kyler Murray did, and Kyler Murray was good at. Jared Goff he performs almost better under the under center, so I'm sure they'll be able to kind of take care of that. But Drew Petzing, 38 years old, is an offensive coordinator, was a DB in college actually coming from the Kevin Stefanski tree. He kind of bounced around with Kevin Stefanski. He was in Minnesota for a little bit with him, went to the Browns with him. Kevin Stefanski is obviously a really good really good head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have success in Cleveland. No one has success in Cleveland. But the other thing, there's the other two sort of connections to Drew in Detroit. One, he's Ben Johnson's best friend. He was he was a groomsman for Ben Johnson's wedding. So when the Cardinals came to play here last year, I'm sure there was some, a dinner or something that was had between Ben Johnson, Drew, Mike, or Dan Campbell, so I'm sure there's some familiarity there. I don't know if that's better or worse that we can't have Ben Johnson. Let's try and go get his best friend. I don't know what that says, if anything. But the other thing is that he also worked with Hank Fraley, in Minnesota. They were there for 3 years together. So again, another voice that's a very, very well-regarded voice in the Detroit building that was probably pushing for him. So the things you already kind of broke down his numbers and how, what he does well, what he doesn't do well. One of the knocks about him, or the knocks I should say about him, not really his fault, but when he had that offense in Arizona going on the ground, like you mentioned, they never really threw the ball really well, but on the ground they did really well. A lot of that success was attributed to Arizona's offensive line coach at the time, Clayton Adams. He was regarded as one of the best offensive minds in the game. He was the offensive line coach. He has since moved on to be the OC at Dallas. And we saw a little bit of regression with the Arizona Cardinals. So a lot of people were saying okay, how much was it actually Drew and how much was it Clayton Adams? And I think you don't really need to worry about that, because he's going from where he had a fantastic offensive line coach to Hank Fraley, where, granted, Hank struggled this year with our offensive line, all the injuries, but Hank is also well regarded as one of the best offensive minds, one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. So if that's what really helped him out in Arizona, he's going to kind of have that by proxy here in Detroit as well with Hank. And it just really comes down to all about injuries. If they were so slaughtered with injuries, the Cardinals, we talk about it all the time on our show about how we're decimated by injuries. The Cardinals on offense were just destroyed. And really all they had was Trey McBride. And you already went over his numbers. Trey McBride last year, he had 169 targets, 129 catches, 1,239 yards receiving in 17 games, and had 11 touchdowns. Those are all basically all record numbers for a tight end. So if you're buying anyone's stock with this new hire, you better be buying Sam Laporta stock for sure.
Trey McBride had an insane season. I mean, so it's no joke that, Petzing, he wants to make the tight end a focal point. So yeah, I mean, we've been calling for it for years. Obviously, this past year, Sam Laporta battling injuries, then out for the season. Pretty unlucky back injury. And so I could never really get going this season. Even in years past, though, I feel like he, had games where just didn't get any targets. He wasn't the focal point. We obviously get why, this Lions offense has a ton of mouths to feed. And so I totally get that. But, there are games where we got to get Laporta going, and seemingly we just can't. So that might be one thing that, maybe Petzing is some kind of a tight end whisperer, and he's really going to get the most out of Sam Laporta. I'll probably draft him in fantasy, and then Laporta will probably not even scratch the top 10. So that is the way it is. But yeah, you mentioned one more thing. I want to just touch on it a little bit more. The fit in this offense, and specifically the fit with Jared Goff. One thing I do like about, Petzing's offenses, and, it is a little bit vanilla, and I'll talk about how this could be a bad thing. But, this guy, he's prioritizing protecting the quarterback, so protecting Jared Goff and having defined reads, which I think that's exactly what Jared Goff is. That's his bread and butter. He's going to stay in the pocket. He's going to get to his first, second, and third read extremely fast. He's going to distribute the ball where it needs to be. That's literally the offense that Petzing is running. So I think it does fit very well with the Detroit Lions, and we could have success. We've seen success in the past with an offense similar to this. Now, what I don't want is just some kind of yes man where he's just gonna run all of the plays that Dan Campbell wants with none of the innovation that maybe we've seen from a Ben Johnson. I do think we need to continue to be innovating because a pretty big knock that I've been reading from Drew Petzing and his offense is that it is pretty predictable. And, you know, there's even opposing defenses who've been quoted saying, you know, we knew what was coming on third downs. They're just, these are basic concepts that he's running, and they're super predictable. So I would hate to see that. Obviously, the last thing you want to be is predictable. You want to run your bread and butter, but you don't want to be predictable. You want to have innovations and wrinkles, and just make sure that what you're showing on tape, you know, the first quarter of the season isn't what you're showing on tape the last 4 games of the season, when, you know, you need to innovate, you need to come up with something new. So that's one of my biggest worries with Drew Petzing.
And you bring up a great point, because I mean, all these numbers are being thrown out there with him and with the Cardinals, and it's so hard because it's a terrible franchise, because they had so many injuries. But you're right, he has become predictable many times. He is also one of the worst him as an offensive coordinator were one of the worst teams on fourth down conversions. So really something's got to give there. Dan Campbell obviously loves going for it, and we really got bit in the ass a lot this past year going for it and having predictable play calls like you just mentioned, or just terrible play calls in general, and not getting the fourth downs. And suddenly our defense is out there, their offense has short field, you know, or field advantage. And so that's something that something's got to give. Dan Campbell loves to go for it on fourth down. Drew seems to, you know, have some struggles with converting on fourth down. Now he has better numbers in like red zone success rates, better numbers on third down, stuff like that. But that's going to be huge. Who's going to basically find the middle? Is Dan Campbell going to pull back a little bit to try and find that middle ground? Are we going to basically pull Drew up and be better, make him better on fourth downs? It's going to be super important. And I feel like even before then, last year, before Drew was here, like we struggled with some predictability with our team, and saying like everyone knew this was coming. We're sitting on our couches knowing this was coming. So if we already kind of had a little bit of that in our offense, we might even be in some trouble there. So, I mean, it's really tough, just because, like I said, there's a lot of question marks coming. If this was the same exact guy coming from, you know, a non-Cardinals team, and not even like a superstar team, or just like a very average team, like, you know, I don't know, pick any team. I feel like, and he just didn't have the stink of Arizona on him, we probably would be like, still don't know who the guy is, but like maybe it's okay. I mean, he was on the athletic publications 50 under 40s list. A lot of coaches saw him in line for a head coaching position at some point. All these former players that had played with him just talk about like how smart he is. Like he considers each game like a test, and he studies for each test, and he's extremely intelligent in what he does, and he's able to break down defenses, and that's what he's taught. He's so smart, and he's only 38 years old. So you hit on him, kind of find like a Ben Johnson kind of thing, where you get like maybe 4 or 5 years of great offensive, you know, play calling, and before he obviously will get a chance at a head coaching position like Ben Johnson. But it sounds like in the industry, it was only a matter of time before he got this an even larger opportunity. Obviously, he's going technically lateral. I think going Arizona to Detroit is definitely not lateral, at least in terms of Super Bowl potential and stuff like that. But then you look at the Arizona Cardinals and how bad they were. So it's so much an up and down. And if you're angry about this, I'm there's no reason not to be. If you want to come out and say I have no idea about him, we'll have to wait and see. I probably fall in that camp. Or if you want to be like, yeah, all the experts actually love him. All the experts say he's extremely intelligent and he was going to get a head coaching position at some point. Let's roll with that. I won't fault you for that. It's such a hard, like you said, such a hard vanilla hiring. But at the same time, our window's now, and our window after the Johnny Morton debacle is starting to close. So maybe the vanilla play calling wasn't the proper call there. So it's tough, man.
Yeah, vanilla, but I mean, it's also a safe hire as well. And so again, I've never been one saying I want a safe hire, but you can kind of see maybe why Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are leaning more towards that. Because like if they take another shot at like David Blau, for instance, who inexperienced, this would be basically his first time calling plays, right? If they were to give him that job, I think Washington hired him as their OC, right? But it's take a stab at another guy who has never called plays, just like a Johnny Morton. And, I could see that backfiring as well. So they went with a safe call. They went with a fit that, is on paper going to be pretty much exactly what we want. But is he the guy? I'm just not sure. There were other guys out there, even like a Zach Robinson's out there too. So, and I don't, can I just say one kind of mean thing that I probably shouldn't even say? Does Drew Petzing have to be so goddamn bald? Like he is just, I already know it. I'm going to be, we're going to go for it on a fourth down and the play call is going to be shit. Then they're going to cut to the sideline of just this guy's big bald head, just probably with a dumb smirk on his face, and I'm gonna get really mad. So I have nothing against bald people, but does he have to be so bald?
He's also extremely short. I'm surprised to read that he was a DB. Granted, he was a DB at a Division three school, but he was a DB. He's also very short. I cannot imagine he's just from the pictures that I've seen of him. I cannot imagine that he is over 5'8". I'm just looking it up right now.
Yeah, Google has him listed at 5'7", so
Five.
not the worst. But for a DB, that's pretty short.
And standing next to Dan Campbell, who's what 6'4", 6'5", and just a monster of a human. And that. All jokes aside, that is also another huge part of this is that Petzing loves running 13 personnel. That's obviously 12 and 13 personnel with two tight ends, even three tight ends. So we already talked about Trey McBride. We talked about Sam Laporta, how he's probably going to benefit from this. Dan Campbell's a former tight end himself. Dan Campbell, you have to assume he sees what he does, what he was able to do with Trey McBride and in the tight end position. Dan Campbell is someone who very much values the tight end position with Sam. And we struggled this last year when Sam went down. So that has to play somewhat of a role in the consideration. If anything, that's just another check on the will work here in Detroit side for Dan Campbell, and that he's very tight end heavy, and Dan Campbell's a tight end himself.
Yeah, tight end whisperer. Dan wanted it. I guess there's really not much more that we can really break down from Drew Petzing, just because the sample size, that's 3 years, but it's 3 years of the Arizona Cardinals with a mixture of injuries and not knowing who is at quarterback and starting Jacoby Brissett. And there's so many variables at play to where it's really hard to grade this guy. But I would love to just hear your grade. I mean, knee-jerk reaction, or now that we have actually been able to digest the hire for 2 full days, basically, what grade are you giving Brad Holmes for this hire?
Yeah, I fear that I fear for the sake of podcasting, you and I are probably going to give this the same grade. And I think it's very fair. Before I do give my grade, the last thing I want to point out, just looking at the Cardinals offense, in this age of transfer portals in college, when you get a when you get a coach, a lot of times you can kind of look from their previous team and be like, are they going to bring anyone over there with him? Are there any free agent, going to the NFL level? Are there any free agents that specifically on the offensive side who maybe just mesh super well with Drew, and they just want to play for him because they understand his system, and maybe they want to come over here, maybe take a little bit of a pay cut and follow their offensive coordinator. They got nobody. They have nobody. Maybe you could say you can maybe in some way target James Conner. He's not going to be a free agent, but you got I guess technically you got Amari DiMarcado, who was 27 years old. The running back, a running back too. A lot of questions about David Montgomery right now. Maybe he could fill that role. The best free agent that they have coming up is Jonah Williams, who is a right tackle, very, very just average, nothing I'd really want him to follow him. So that's just the last thing. There's no players, unfortunately, tagged along with Drew. If you would have gotten Mike McDaniels, there's probably a decent amount of guys out there that wanted to play for Mike and have played for him before and love his creativity. So that's the last thing I'll say on that. My grade, I'm going to, just because if it was in a vacuum and we didn't have the Johnny Morton debacle last year, I think I would end up giving this a B-. But because it's coming off of the heels of just an absolute disaster season with a terrible offensive coordinator, and it was a wasted year, and the window's already starting to close, we missed the playoffs, I'm going to go with a C-. I think the past year or two of issues we've had, it brings it down a full letter grade. So I'm going to go with a C- on this because, like you said, just a small sample size, but just not somebody, it very well could work, but just not somebody that I'm excited about or I would want, essentially.
Yeah, it's so funny you said C-. My knee-jerk reaction from reading the name and then kind of doing just a bit of looking into this guy was a C-. And since I've had 2 days to really digest this and really learn just the ins and outs of Drew Petzing and exactly what he's done in his pretty brief coaching career. Granted, he is 38 years old, so that's to be expected. But I am going to bump mine up from a C- to a C+, just given that this fit, it could be really good for the Lions. And I say could, there's still a big asterisk. I did, walk through that I'm, pretty nervous that this offense could be a little bit too predictable, too vanilla. But at the same time, if we can stay healthy, if we can revamp our offensive line and really just outwill and outmuster opposing defenses like we have done in years past. That's going to open up the passing game. We have so many weapons. I think that it could be a match made in heaven. So that's why I am saying C+. There were still guys that I wanted a lot more. Grant, I didn't even really know about this guy. I had to do my research on him, but it's not the worst hire in the world. I just think that it is very safe, very vanilla hire. And I don't want vanilla. I don't want vanilla right now when our window is, closing. It's any window in the NFL is just going to be short just by the nature of this league. And so I wanted more of a home run, let's take our swing, let's go win a Super Bowl. And I don't think they did that here.
I think I can see my grade being raised if the rest of the opening positions get, like, if the rest of the candidates, like the Mike McDaniels, the other guys that like we probably would have wanted here in Detroit, end up falling and going to other head coaching opportunities. Meaning maybe they just weren't, well, again, we'll never know, but maybe they just weren't willing to take that step away from head coaching to try and build up the resume anymore. They made it to the top, where they want to be a head coach. They wanted to stay that way. And they you know what I'm saying. If one of these guys ends up being an offensive coordinator somewhere else, then I'm pretty confident in my grade there. But if they go to be a head coach position, chances are they don't want to come back and be an offensive. Even how good the offense here in Detroit is with all those tools, and a lot of people were saying that was better than the Raiders offense or the Raiders head coaching position or the Titans head coaching position. They might not feel that way. So if they come back and they're all head coaches, like all the candidates that we were looking at, all take head coaching positions, I maybe would raise my grade up. If they come back and they're still offensive coordinators somewhere, I think I'm comfortable with mine. And the final thing I'll say before we go to break, none of this matters if Brad Holmes doesn't go out and fill the roster holes that we've been begging him to fill for 4 years now. You're shooting the man in the foot before he even starts. If you go, and granted, the offense is really, you have a lot of tools there. You just really need to retool that offensive line in some way. But you can't just say like, here you go, good luck, and running to next year with the issues we had. So it all still comes down to Brad Holmes. If he's your guy, he's your guy. But give him the tools and the ammunition to go out there and run the heavy scheme that you want to do. So yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page there. And I think realistically, that's where every Lions fan should be. You got guys online that are like, oh my God, I hate this. And it's like you said, nobody knew who this guy, unless you were in Arizona, which I don't know if you've seen any Arizona like Reddit threads or like fan threads. They hated this guy. They absolutely, I've seen countless like memes and GIFs and videos of them just like crying tears of happiness that he is out of Arizona. So like, unless you were an Arizona fan, you had no idea who this guy was. Maybe, I guess, if you maybe owned one of the Arizona Cardinals on your fantasy team and had a reason to look into why they weren't producing, unless it was Trey McBride, who obviously was, no one knew. So like, realistically, you should be on the same page as us. As like, no one knew who this guy was. So we got to wait and see. Like, we'll see. There's nothing else we can say about it. All right, let's go to a quick break. And then when we come back, we will switch gears a little bit and head over to the hardwood and talk about the Pistons. All right, welcome back. Let's shift gears a little bit. We talked about the Lions. We are Lions First podcast. So segment 1 is about the Pistons. Last week, and maybe even the week before, we did a whole bunch of Red Wings stuff. We talked about the Sergei Fedorov jersey retirement. We played a little locker long shot with jersey retirements throughout this city of Detroit and all their sports teams. We did not talk about the Pistons. I truly could talk about the Pistons 24/7. We have the trade deadline coming up here shortly. So the next few weeks will probably be pretty Pistons heavy. But let's talk about them now, because they are absolutely rolling. Pistons right now still sit at the top of the East. They're putting up, I don't know how they're doing it. It's, in a way, we can get into it in a second. In a way, it's a little bit scary to me, because some of the numbers offensively don't shout championship contender, specifically with the three-point shooting and the efficiency and stuff like that. But it's just like the Tigers in their season, which like the numbers aren't saying they should be doing this, but somehow they're getting it done. And right now they're getting it done by being the best team in the NBA defensively. And that's so fun to see your team have an identity again. It's just like every team that comes and plays here in Detroit, they say, it's not my words, these are words from other teams. They leave here and they're sore as hell. Like they hate, if they had to play us on a back-to-back, whether it's the first night, the next night, then they're going to be really struggling, or the other way around. They are just dreading having to play this Pistons team, because they are playing with a defensive a Detroit defensive mind, and it seems to be working for now. They're number one in the East right now.
It's so beautiful, man. Yeah, number one in the East, 31-10, and you mentioned it, man. Their defensive rating, 109.3. That's second best in the NBA. They are quite literally strangling opponents. They are beating the shit out of opponents. They have that mentality. It's a mentality that you mentioned it, but this is the Pistons. This is the going to work Pistons, the bad boys Pistons. They're always teams that are, we are going to out physical, out hustle you, punch you in the mouth, make it so you don't want to play us. And that's exactly how these Pistons are playing right now. It's beautiful. They have a cushion in the East. So I mean, not only are they just winning, they're the clear-cut best team in the Eastern Conference right now. Huge game against Boston at LCA Monday night. They're winning in style, man, and really in spite style sometimes. It's really just this defense that is so suffocating. But 5.5 game lead over the second place Boston Celtics right now. Opponents' points per game, that's 110. That's third best in the NBA. Net rating is second best in the NBA, plus 7.2. So they're not just winning close games. They're really dominating these opponents, and it all comes down to defense. This defense is just insanely good.
Yeah, and I love what you said there because, they're dominating defensively and the net rating. But the one thing that is really gives you hope for the rest of the season is that even in their losses, they are the best amongst the best in the NBA in net ratings in their losses. Meaning, in their losses, they're playing these games extremely close. I personally can only think of definitely one, maybe two blowouts that they've had this season, which is not much. You can't say that about many teams. They have at least a few different blowouts. I mean, we just blew out the Knicks the other day, and there's a number at the time it was a number 1 versus number 2 matchup. Their losses are extremely good losses, and they're close. And so even the losses help you out there, but offensively is when I agree with you defensively. I love it. This defense can win a championship. Offensively, it's a little more concerning, like I mentioned before. So right now, what really has me just and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want this to be an uplifting Pistons section, but the only parts that are somewhat concerning to me offensively, Cade Cunningham's three-point shooting. I don't think last year it took him after the All-Star break to really get his three-point going. If you guys remember, he just was a flamethrower after the All-Star break. It was insane, and it truly lifted this team and brought him to a separate level. This year, hopefully maybe something similar happens with the All-Star break coming up, but he's just hitting 32% from three. Last year, after he went nuclear for the second half, he finished the year at 35.6% from three. So even getting that three-point percentage up 3 to 4 points would do wonders for this team because three-point wise, we're amongst the league worst in attempts per game. We're just not taking them. We're amongst the league worst in three-point percentages made per game. So when we are taking them, we're not really cashing in on them. Outside of Duncan Robinson, maybe outside of Javonte Green, we really don't have anyone. Tobias Harris really was shooting the ball pretty well, but he's been really up and down with injuries this year. So three-point wise, I'm a little bit concerned. If you really eliminate our getting out and running our transition offense, force the Pistons to play a little bit of half-court offense, I think that's pretty conducive. That'll be able to shut this offense down, and they'll have to figure out ways. Now, that being said, we can still take over a game defensively, and if that's what you're going to do to us, we're going to drag you down with us, and it's going to be a race to 100 so you can get there first, which is fine. That's fun to play, but it's a little bit concerning with the three-point percentage. Now, that's all I want to say on the negative side, because like you said, I mean, this team is so fun to watch. In my opinion, they're must-see TV, and ESPN is essentially showing that. We have five nationally televised games in our next 10 matchups. So the NBA, the world is starting to recognize that Detroit might be for real, and there's a very real opportunity to have another home playoff advantage here in Detroit. I think I saw today.
Oh yeah,
because of that 5.5 game lead we have, the magic number, which is crazy to already be talking about magic numbers, but the magic number is 32, I think. So we're already looking at that, and it is very, very, it's looking really good at the moment.
I never know how magic numbers work when you're this far from the end of the season and there's
I know, right?
multiple teams, the Knicks were in second in the East, and now it's the Celtics. How does that get calculated into that magic number when there's multiple teams chasing? But regardless, cool. It's cool to see. I like what you said about having that home court advantage. You were at playoff games last year where, I mean, even though we didn't win, a playoff game at home, and I've heard this from multiple folks that just the atmosphere is wild. This year, 2025, 2026 season, the Pistons are incredible at home. Little Caesars arena is an actual home court advantage. The Pistons are 18-4 at home this season. So obviously the record's awesome. They're good on the road. They're good at home as well. But dude, 18-4. I mean, this is going to be just an incredible atmosphere. I'm really hoping that this is going to be like a Ford Field atmosphere that we probably saw, 2 years ago before the ticket prices really started getting jacked up, where the average fan can still afford to go to a playoff game and be loud as hell versus, when it gets too corporate and, you're giving away tickets and people don't really care and it might not get as loud. So I think we might be in this sweet spot. I also might be just overanalyzing it a little bit, but I do think that LCA from a basketball standpoint is in the sweet spot where it's going to go crazy. And Pistons fans are just craving more playoff basketball. It's going to be special. I don't want to say they can just coast the rest of the season, but my big thing is just keep doing what you're doing. Keep playing great defense. I think when we get to the trade deadline, and we'll break this down in future episodes in a couple of weeks, but yeah, you mentioned the 3-point shooting. I think adding another shooter, possibly, a 3-and-D type of guy, or really just more of a two-way guy who can, hit at maybe a 36% clip from three. Just having one more shooter, I think, would go a long way. But this team is damn good as they sit right now. And man, I'm fucking pumped.
I love it. Like I said, I think it's must-see TV. I was just going through the NBA leaders at the moment. Pretty much every category: points, rebounds, steals, assists, turnovers. Every rebound, every category has a Detroit Piston in some regard. In their like top 7 to 8, depending on the different categories. So everyone's performing. You got guys like Ron Holland who are still doing the dirty work. You got the dog pound with Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. Isaiah Stewart is so fun. And I remember when we were in our 28 game losing streak, and I was doing live watch-alongs and some sad watch-alongs, but the constant during all that was Isaiah Stewart is somebody, and granted, this was 2 or 3 years ago, so he still was a little bit younger. Isaiah Stewart, even though his team's so bad, is absolutely someone that will help a team win a championship someday. He is just the perfect mindset. He's only 6'9", but he is so good defensively. Because, he's 6'9", but he has the longest wingspan in the NBA. That kind of archetype of that just dog mentality, the defensive minded mentality, and the ability to step out and shoot threes, it was always very, very apparent that we might be bad right now, but if we were to give Isaiah Stewart up, any championship contending team would pay through the roof for him because he is that important to any rotation, whether he's starting, coming off the bench, just in the locker room, he's that important. So I'm so happy that he's getting his flowers on the defensive end because he, like I said, he's 6'9". You don't expect him to be one of the best defenders he's the best defender at the rim. I think opponents are only scoring at 46% inside the restricted zone. So that's basically directly underneath the hoop. So that's 46% of dunks that's what they're converting on. So that means he's sending back 54% of shots of dunks at the hoop. That's insane. I'm so happy he's finally getting his flowers. And everyone else, we'll get to Cade here in a second, but everyone's playing their part perfectly.
Man, dude, it's so good. I love Beef Stew. He's improved every year. He's developing that shot, like you mentioned. He's making a 3 a game. He's shooting at about a 34% clip. Should say a 36% clip. So, it's outstanding, man. And yeah, those stats at the rim. What a rim protector, man. It's almost like it's the Wemby effect, but where Wemby is has a foot on Beef Stew. Beef Stew's doing it with just grit and hustle, man. And that's really Detroit. So I love that so much. And I know you're probably, if you're listening, thinking okay, they've been talking about the Pistons so much. They haven't really talked about Cade Cunningham yet. That's by design. Cade Cunningham, all-star. That's what we're going to talk about this next segment. Before I get to that, though, this Cade Cunningham segment is brought to you by our good friends at Good Feels Cannabis Seltzer. New sponsor for us. The Cannabis Seltzer from Good Feels offers a new era of refreshment. Fellas, we are in the middle of dry January. As you're listening to this, January 1st, you still got a couple more weeks, a week and a half left of dry January. Well, Good Feels still has you covered. Crafted with high-quality, natural ingredients, these beverages provide a consistent, enjoyable, uplifting experience perfect for any occasion. And here's the best part. You can enjoy an exclusive discount with promo code GRIT. That's promo code GRIT for 20% off any product at shop.getgoodfeels.com. What a mouthful. Shout out Get Good Feels. And now Cade, man. Dude, all-star starter Cade Cunningham, officially named an Eastern Conference all-star starter for the 2026 games. First time he's been named a starter. Second time he's been named an all-star in his still very young career. This is huge, man. This is the first Piston to start an all-star game. Do you know who the last one was? I had to look it up. It's not like just glaring at you.
I know, I think that before Cade was an all-star last year, the last all-star we had was Blake Griffin, I think, when he put the absolute city on his back with his double knee braces. I don't think he was a starter though. We're gonna have to go back to like Chauncey Billups.
So just after Chauncey, and I want to confirm this, but I have right now in front of me first Piston to start an All-Star game since Allen Iverson in 2009. So this is, I mean,
That's crazy that he got the nod because we got the back half of Allen Iverson's career. It's crazy. He got the starting nod.
AI must have been just balling in 09. I'm gonna have to look that up because it almost seems too good to be true there. And if not, then it's probably like something like Chauncey Billups. But at any rate, first starter in 17 years or possibly more. For the Pistons, for Cade Cunningham to be an all-star starter. And the best thing for me, it's how the other players are voting, because a portion of this is a player vote, and he actually got the most votes among point guards in the East. So it goes to show everything that we've already been saying. But not only is he extremely highly valued by the fans and the coaches and whatever, but also by his peers, man. He's the guys who are going toe to toe with him. They're also voting him as the best guard in the East. He's just that special.
Yeah, so they are switching up the All-Star. The NBA All-Star hasn't worked in many, many years. They're trying. I mean, credit to them. They are trying to have somewhat of success with it. They saw what the NHL did with Four Nations last year. They're adopting it, that same sort of U.S. or I guess just Four Nations in general mentality, but still putting their own strange spin on it. I think spins that make it almost worse. I think they would just go straight up U.S. versus the world and like team versus team, whatever. But they're switching it up a little bit. So this is the first time they're doing U.S. versus the world. It's a round robin style, 3 different teams, two of which being U.S. born players, and then the third is being the world team. And you mentioned it. So it's a combination of the starters were determined by weighing the fan vote, which was worth 50%. With the players and the media vote also obviously both worth 25%. So you're right. Cade, he ranked first in players' votes, he ranked second in media votes, and he ranked fourth in fan votes among Eastern Conference starters. So it's almost, I don't know which, I guess players would, I was just gonna say, I don't know which one would be worth the most, but I think definitely players is probably the one that even though the fans are what is technically weighed the heaviest, I think players getting that nod is definitely the most important, because these guys are seeing, like you said, Cade is a top player in the NBA, and I just love like coming across just clips on Twitter and different like YouTube videos of talking heads on ESPN, like Kendrick Perkins or other guys like whoever has like their different videos, and Jeff Teague and stuff like that, and talking about Cade and how he's so smooth with it. No, he can't be sped up. He's a big guard, 6'6". I just love that the media, I say media, but like the old players are now recognizing in his talent. This is also the first year they didn't go by positions. So normally you'd be like, all right, as a point guard, as a shooting guard, small forward, or whatever. They just kind of went just naturally people who were voted for. So the other East starters is Cade, Tyrese Maxey, Giannis, Jaylen Brown, and Jalen Brunson. So kind of interesting that there's technically 3 point guards on there, and then Jaylen Brown, who's a wing, and then Giannis, who's like a 4. So it's interesting that there's technically 3 point guards, but yet Cade still got the nod. So they're going to be going up against the quote unquote Western All-Stars for the. Actually, I don't know exactly how this is going to work, because under quote the Western All-Stars, you have Shea, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, and Wemby. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work with Steph being on that team and not technically, for the world team. But either way, yeah, I mean, Cade getting recognized from players, media's, fans, everyone. It's awesome.
He's insane, man. He's just had an insane season last year. He's just doing it all over again, and better in some aspects. So points per game, 25.9, nearly averaging 26 a game. Assists, 9.8 assists, which is a career high for him, and I think damn near leading the league if it isn't. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but so he's nearly averaging a double-double. Add 6 rebounds to that as well. The guy can do everything. He is the straw that stirs the Pistons drink. We've known it for a while. The media has caught wind. Everyone knows now. Opposing players know. It's just he is that good. He plays at his own pace. He can speed you up. He can slow you down. He can get to his spot. He's insanely deadly around the rim, and just he can do everything, man. He's got eyes seemingly in the back of his head. Really, you mentioned it. The only thing that he could probably improve on, 3-point shooting, and we have seen clips where he just turns it on second half of the season. So it's not even like a point of concern for me at all. And he's elite. He's elite on defense too, and I think that's what maybe definitely sets him aside from a guy like Luka Doncic, who, yes, you can get like 30 a game from Luka, but what are you getting on the other side of the court? And lack of defense from a guy like Luka, you're not seeing that from Cade. I mean, Cade is just he can defend pretty much all 5 positions. Certainly, 1 through 4, he's comfortable defending. He's lengthy. He's quick enough. He can play great defense. He's like perfect for what this team, what this city embodies, that grit, that defense. He can do it all, man. And I'm just so excited for him to have his flowers. All-Star game starter. Can't say enough good things about this young man.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say about Cade, and then I have one other guy I want to bring up. So Cade's he had a little bit of a wrist contusion, sat out 2 games. He came back against the Celtics last night, depending when you're listening to this, like you mentioned, big win in Detroit for the Pistons there against the Celtics. Cade's still not 100% back from that wrist injury. He didn't have his best scoring night, finished the night with just 16 points, but he still was able to put his imprint on the game. He had 14 assists and 0 turnovers. So even when he's not scoring the ball, he still is defending well, and he's still dishing. 14 assists and 0 turnovers is like insane. That's top, and that was one thing that he's always been knacked with, is that just he plays fast and aggressive, and while he doesn't get sped up, he just is sort of careless with the ball. He's really turning that around and taking that away from his haters this year with his being careful with the ball. And I mean, 14 assists and 0 turnovers is crazy. The last guy still talking about all-stars I want to give a nod to is Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren, we don't know who the other all-star players are going to be, the reserves. It is most likely that Jalen Duren is 100%. He's going to be in the conversation. If he doesn't actually make it, he's going to be one of the 1 or 2 guys, the first guys out, probably be considered somewhat of a snub. But Jalen Duren is having an awesome year that also needs to be recognized. He was a guy who always had the body and the ability to dominate at every level that he's ever played basketball. Got to the NBA, never really put it together, especially defensively, kind of just seemed lost out there. This past offseason, he had to, actually, if you recall one of our episodes, it was like midway through last year, he just had this moment where he just said, quote unquote, he looked himself in the mirror and said, enough of this bullshit. Stop crying about these people pushing you around. Study the game, study the defense, get better. And he's truly turned it around since then. Jalen Duren has been insane. We talked about it during this past offseason with him and Ivy both being up for extensions. I was on the camp that we needed to pay Duren and wait on Ivy. We obviously waited on both. Duren's going to cost a lot of money, and I pray we're able to keep him around. I think he has that relationship with the rest of our players that I think we can keep him around, because he is invaluable to this team, and he's most likely going to get his first all-star nod this year because he absolutely deserves it. He's playing possessed offensively, defensively. He's the perfect complement to what this team needs. So I think he deserves some flowers too. Hopefully we can come in an episode next week or the next few weeks and give him his flowers for being an all-star. We'll have to wait and see, though.
Yeah, and dude, the craziest thing, like, I have to remind myself, because he is such a grown-ass man, that he's actually not. He just turned 22 years old November of last year. He was born in 2003, for Christ's sake. So, like, he is doing so much at still a very young age. Yes, we definitely missed out on his rookie extension, and it's going to cost us. But I mean, just career numbers across the board for Duren: 17.8 points, 10.7 rebounds. He's a walking double-double. He's also added, a steal and a block per game, essentially, and he's efficient. Like, obviously, he is in and around the net. He is not spacing out the floor at all, which is totally fine. You got other guys to space out the floor. His space is very much like right, front and center in that paint, shooting 63% and just extremely efficient. 7 for 11 and call it a day. Mix in 10 rebounds and a couple of free throws. His free throws are improving as well. He is incredible. I think he absolutely should be an all-star. If he is not, yes, I think it would be a snub. I think it's one of those where like maybe the league is waiting and seeing one more year, they'll give it to someone else, and then they'll, if Duran pops off again, he's a clear all-star. Same thing kind of happened to Cade, if you remember. But yeah, I think he's essentially a shoe-in, and just a tremendous season for that young man.
So again, we have a lot more to talk about with the Pistons. I truly could do. We're a Lions first podcast, but I 100% could actually do a Pistons first podcast. So I love talking about. I can't, like, one of my favorite episodes is going to be, as always, every year, the one where we talk about the Detroit Pistons and trade deadline and what we can get and stuff like that. So we will absolutely break that down. I think you and I maybe actually have some differing opinions on that. So we'll definitely be breaking down all the options, everything that's available for them, and we'll do honestly a whole episode on that. So stay tuned if you're a Pistons fan. If you're not, hey, catch them on TV. Like I mentioned, they're going to be on live TV a lot over the next 3 weeks because this team is so hot, number one team in the East. So try and catch them. They're really, really fun. They're bringing back the old school style of the Pistons. They're definitely worth a watch. So give them a shot there. So let's wrap up the show with our Grit of the Week. First and foremost, before we do, you guys know Grit of the Week is always brought to you by Pins and Aces. Pins and Aces is a premium golf lifestyle brand that offers standout men's and women's apparel, golf bags, head covers, and on-course accessories. All this stuff are designed to elevate performance, which is key for not so great golfers like me. I need to wear everything I can that's going to give me that little bit of edge and self-expression on the course. Let you be the golfer that you are. What makes them different, you might be asking? Everything they make combines high quality materials, functionality golfers actually need, and bold, creative designs that break the mold of traditional golf gear. Away are the times with just boring golf polos and khakis out there, bringing in the Pins and Aces style of expressing yourself on the course. You know what they say: look good, feel good, play good. And then again, when it comes to golf, someone like me, I need every edge I can get. So go to pinsandaces.com, use promo code GRIT for 21% off any purchase at pinsandaces.com. Thank you, Pins and Aces, for always sponsoring Grit of the Week. Kyle, kick us off.
Yeah, dude, Grit of the Week. I feel bad for doing this because last week I just took the most low-hanging fruit and went Sergei Fedorov. And damn it, I'm sorry, Ty, I'm doing it again. My Grit of the Week, Cade Cunningham. When you get named an all-star starter for the first time for the Pistons since freaking Allen Iverson, man, in 2009, and, ranking first in player voting amongst your peers for guards, like, you are damn sure getting Grit of the Week. Cade Cunningham, just incredible. Our boy, our golden boy. There's only so many words that I can say to just, to say how much that this kid, this guy, this grown man, whatever you want to call him, means to the city of Detroit. From a sports standpoint, Cade, just 26-10 on the season. The sky's the limit. This team is first place in the East. It's 100% because of Cade Cunningham. Not 100%, obviously. It's a team effort, and this team is incredible in its own sense. But just the grittiest start to a season that I've seen from the Pistons, like maybe in like 2 decades. So yes, and a lot of it's Cade Cunningham. Grit of the Week, baby.
Yeah, there's a reason why when you think back on it, Cade Cunningham is most definitely our most winningest Grit of the Week participants, because he just does insane things. I'm very much on record. I'm saying he's my favorite sports figure in Detroit at the moment, and that even puts him above Tarek Skubal for me. Maybe just because Cade plays every night. Tarek is only once a week, whatever. So obviously, being named an all-star, a starting all-star, like you said, that's absolutely worthy of Grit of the Week. I knew you were going to go that way. If you didn't, I was absolutely going to go that way myself. So I'm going to call an audible, and obviously, Cade, shout out to him. I'm going to call an audible, though, and follow in that same footsteps, but it's someone that I think just doesn't quite get as much talk and maybe credit to this Pistons turnaround as he should. And that's JB Bickerstaff. My Grit of the Week is going to be JB Bickerstaff, because for all the reasons you just went through talking about the Pistons, all the reasons we talked about for the first, even before we got to Cade Cunningham in the All-Star game, this Pistons team has an identity, and that's something we haven't had literally since maybe 2008. When you go back to the Blake Griffin days and Stanley Johnson days and the Luke Kennard days, like the team had no identity. They had no personality to them, and that's partially, I really believe, why we struggled for so long, and we were just mediocre at best and always kind of in that around the back end of the lottery sort of spot, never making the playoffs, never quite getting a good draft pick. And that's the worst thing a franchise can do. JB Bickerstaff was cast out of Cleveland. He quote unquote couldn't get it done when it mattered, meaning he kept taking them, far in the playoffs, but they couldn't get it done. We were coming off of just the absolute disgusting era that was Monty Williams, and had that such bad taste in our mouth. And we brought in JB Bickerstaff. I think we have actually talked about this on the show before, but I've never seen two coaches be so perfect for a city than Dan Campbell and JB Bickerstaff are for Detroit. They both understand grit. They both want to fight. They both want to argue. You see how many times JB Bickerstaff is yelling at the refs on the sideline after the games. He's yelling at the media guys about the refs, in defense of our guys. He always has their back. He knows that this defense is what makes this city great. And while the offense definitely has its flaws, and hopefully we can fix some of those coming up here shortly at the trade deadline, like I said, even if we don't, we can still drag you down to the depths of hell and make you fight and scratch and claw to score 95 points. And if we only score 98, who cares? Who cares if we only make 4 or 5 threes? We're going to try and get to 98. We're going to keep you at 92. We're going to win that game with defensive intensity. And that's what JB Bickerstaff absolutely thrives in. And I just love the way he has listened and knows each of our players and knows exactly how much to let them go and when to reel them back, and when he has to argue with the refs, or when he can let them argue with the ref, or when he's okay with Isaiah Stewart getting a technical because he knows it's going to rile him up, like Rasheed Wallace used to. I just love JB Bickerstaff. I think he deserves so much credit, and Trajan Langdon too, but JB is so perfect for Detroit. My grid of the week's got to go to him.
Yeah, dude, we love JB. He is just perfect for this team, and it really just a blessing. You mentioned, oh my God, just the darkest days with Monty Williams, and I had forgotten about that because we are just in such Dreamville right now with JB and with Cade and with Jalen Duren and everyone just having a role in this offense. And I don't have JB's coaching record for the Pistons in front of me, but like it's almost impossible. This turnaround started last year, now this year, just the best team in the East, and yet it's not impossible. And he is 72 and 47 in his Pistons coaching tenure, and that's just night and day better than we have seen in a very long time. He's a breath of fresh air, perfect for what we need, and the sky's the limit, man. They're right now best team in the East. We know anything can happen in the playoffs, but right now, they're the team to beat, and I just don't see them slowing down. So, JB Bickerstaff, man, grit of the week.
I just think back to that one game. I think it was towards the end of the 28-game losing streak where something happened. I don't recall if it was Cade mad at one of our players, Cade mad at an opponent, Cade mad at a referee. But either way, Cade was yelling at Monty Williams and pleading with him, literally his hands out like this, like leaning forward, like, can we please do something about this? And I swear to God, Monty Williams just had his arms crossed and was just staring at him, not talking, not saying a word, just staring at him, arms crossed. And now look at that, and you look at JB just going to war for these guys. It's just night and day. And so I think he definitely deserves so much credit for that. In a sense, credit to Tom Gores for making that hire. I think we talk about our owners pretty harshly here on this show. I think Tom Gores, credit where credit's due. Tom Gores made the right call there. Mm-hmm. So, all right, that's our show. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. You can find both Kyle and I on Twitter at Kyle_Marino and myself at Dutton_Tyler. You can follow the podcast itself on Instagram or TikTok at Gridiron Report or Twitter at Gridiron Report 1. Finally, you can watch us on YouTube, these full-length episodes on YouTube at Gridiron Report. You can join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That phone number is 313-306-7939. Next week's show is going to be a little bit of a mailbag. So you guys send us your questions on Twitter, call into that voicemail, leave us your questions, your opinions, any sport, Lions, Pistons, Tigers, Red Wings. We're going to go over it. Send us all your questions. We'll discuss them on the podcast. Again, that number is 313-306-7939. And then if you like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars. Leave us a review saying so. Follow us on all forms of social media. We love and appreciate all the support you guys have been. It allows us to just sit here and talk Detroit sports with you, until we're blue in the face. So thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, y'all. Let's go Pistons.
It's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired. Grit Iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on, blast beats, thunder and loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are proud. Tuned in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow.